What up, what up, what up? Let me push my button here. So, it's Thursday morning, July 2nd, the real Independence Day. Today was the day that the Continental Congress got together and voted to become independent from Britain. So today was actually the day that we really started our independence. So, but that's not what I want to talk about. I just wanted to point that out. So I want to start a new little segment that I'm going to try to do every morning. It's going to be called 10 Minutes with Tim. It's going to be on the GrayScale page every time. Hopefully about 9 o'clock every day, Monday through Friday. No Saturday show, because we'll do the main show on Saturday, and we're going to take Sundays off, so nothing on that day. Excuse me. That's not COVID, I promise. Today, though, this morning, I want to try to talk about this whole tearing down monuments and removing monuments, statues, flags, etc., 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 and kind of just symbols of things in general, right? Like, for a lot of people, like, symbols mean something, right? Like, that's their whole point, obviously. But do they have to mean that thing? That's the question I always ask myself. Like, if someone sees a Confederate flag, let's use the Confederate flag as an example, since that's a hot topic right now. If you see the Confederate flag, does it have to mean hatred to you? Does it have to mean slavery? Does it have to mean those things? Does it have to affect you in that way? Or can you decide not to let it affect you at all? If the person that has that flag isn't doing anything hateful towards you, then why are you assuming their hatred just because they have the flag? Shouldn't actions be more important than symbols, I guess, is my point. In this case, like, someone can fly a Confederate flag on their truck all the time and never stop to think to hurt or talk bad about, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera, any other person of any color, of any race, right? So the symbol in that case doesn't actually do anything. It's just a flag. It's just a tablecloth at that point, right? It doesn't have any meaning. So that's one of the things I want to touch on. As far as the removal of statues, I've posted on my personal page a couple of times about the removal of statues. I've seen people posting petitions to keep them. I've seen people posting petitions to remove them. I'm not necessarily for the violent removal of anything, especially because, mainly because that statue or that whatever is someone's property. Even if it is the government's property, it still belongs to something, to some entity. And if you're destroying a person or an entity's property, you're committing a crime as far as I'm concerned. And I'm really lenient on what I think is crime. So to be committing a crime, in my eyes, you've got to be doing something against some person, against something, or against their property. And essentially, the violent removal of statues or the defacing of statues and monuments is, in fact, in my opinion, crime for that reason. But on the flip side of that, actually statues work the same way. Does the statue being in front of the courthouse, let's use local time, right? The statue in front of the courthouse in Defuniak is a Civil War era statue. It's a monument to soldiers who died in the Civil War that were from Walton County. It's not a monument to a specific person. It's not a monument to someone who was a slave owner. And that being said, since I quoted that, none of the monuments that exist out there, Civil War era monuments and monuments to people who fought in the Civil War or in the American Revolution or whatever, none of those monuments exist because that person was a slave owner. That's not why the monument's there. The monument is there because they did something good, not because they did something bad, right? So why are we focusing on the bad in this particular case versus the good? Where was I going? I got sidetracked. Something popped up on my screen. So I can actually see the monuments thing from two sides, right? Because that's how you should always see everything, really, is from both sides, and then determine from there what your opinion is or what you think, which is what I try to do in most cases. So on my personal page, I've posted a lot about how the monuments that exist, Civil War era monuments and things like that, people want to talk about how it's, we're tearing down history, I disagree to an extent, and here's why. I've been to some Civil War monuments in Georgia, in the Stone Mountain area. There's a really cool Civil War era monument there. They actually do a Civil War reenactment battle scene, and I saw that when I was a kid. It was really cool. But the only thing I remember about those things is that they're Civil War era and that they were really cool. I couldn't tell you the name of anybody. I couldn't tell you a date in history. I couldn't tell you anything else about them except that it was Civil War era and it was really cool. And it was in Georgia. Those three things. That being said, I don't think anyone has ever visited, at least anyone from the States, has ever visited a Civil War era monument and learned something that they remembered and retained for any period of time. You might have read the little plaque and been like, oh, this guy was such and such a whoever. That's really cool. And then the next day, you completely forgot about it. So to say that tearing these things down or removing them and replacing them or whatever is destroying history, in my opinion, is completely absurd. That's not how history's taught. After Hitler was defeated, all the Nazi symbolism and all the Nazi statues and things were torn down, but we still know who won World War II, right? We don't think that Hitler won that war. We know what happened, and it's not because of the statues that were left up. It's because that's how history works. Things are told and written down, etc. Now, when you start burning books and you start really destroying history, that's different. But especially in a time like today, and moving forward in our future, I'm sure, everything exists in the world digitally. So even to tear down the statue isn't to remove it completely. There's still going to be pictures of it. There's still going to be, all that sort of stuff. So the point I'm making, I guess, is that to say history is being removed by removing statues and things of that nature is, in my opinion, completely inaccurate. That's not how history is taught. In fact, I would venture to gather, we'll go back to the Defuniak Springs monument, and I couldn't care one way or the other whether that monument stays or goes. It's not even on my radar as far as the thing that I'm concerned with. I'm just using it as an example for this particular talk. I would venture to gather that almost no one in Defuniak Springs has ever actually stopped, gone up to that monument, on purpose, like purposefully driven to Defuniak, gone to that monument, learned and read about that monument outside of maybe a school field trip. No one, once they're an adult, has gotten in their car, driven there, looked at the thing, and actually learned something from it. So why are we even, like, what's the fight, right? Like, if it offends, now, you can't just say if it offends people, take it down, because that's ridiculous. But you also have to understand that when a large group of people take offense at something, that thing might be offensive. If one guy looks at it and, or maybe, a small portion of the community looks at it and goes, I don't know about that thing, it's probably fine, right? But if a lot of people look at it and go, yeah, maybe we should take that down. Maybe that's disingenuous, or maybe that's, whatever, right? Maybe we should take it down and replace it with something different. Not just destroy it, maybe move it, maybe, put it in a museum. I don't know. I don't know what the answer is. Like I said, to me, it's not even on my radar as a thing that affects me at all. So, like, I really don't have on that particular monument, I don't care. Really, all Civil War era monuments, I don't care, and here's why. Like I said, I've only been to a few, and I didn't learn anything, actually, and therefore, what's the point? If they're supposed to be there to teach, but they're not actually teaching, what are they really there for? So, yeah. That's my 10 minutes is actually far over. We're at 12 minutes now, but 10 minutes with Tim can go longer than 10 minutes. But I'm going to start repeating myself soon, so I probably should just shut this down, so we'll summarize. Monuments don't actually teach history. Statues can be taken down and replaced without actually getting butthurt about it. And history doesn't get erased when you take down a thing, because history exists either way. We all know that history is written by the winners, but at the same time, it's written. History's written. It's going to be passed down generation to generation. If you want your kids to know about a thing, you can tell them about it. We don't have to have statues and monuments that nobody goes and looks at anyway to tell us about the Civil War. We know the Civil War happened. We know, for the most part, we know why it happened. There's a little skew in there, but, history is written by the winners, right? So you got to really actually do your research to find out why the Civil War happened. It wasn't just about slavery. But yeah, so that's my thoughts on monuments, statues, and history. Oh my. Appreciate you watching.